I'm Zoe, 27, female. I live in a small, cozy apartment that used to feel like a sanctuary, but has recently started to feel more like a waiting room. I'm a preschool teacher, a job that fills my days with finger, painting, story time, and the kind of innocent chaos that I love. My life was supposed to be simple and happy, built around my career and my wife, Maya. But the person I came home to every night had become a stranger, and I was about to find out she wanted to use me to build a life for herself with someone else. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Our love story used to be my favorite. Maya and I met in college, she, the brilliant, driven architecture student, and I, the education major with a perpetually paint-stained sweater. She was magnetic, with a mind that saw the world in lines and angles, always designing a better future. I was the one who colored that future in, who brought warmth to her clean, minimalist world. Our friends called us the perfect balance. We got married 2 years after graduation in a simple ceremony at City Hall, promising to build a life together, brick by brick. For 5 years, that promise held true. Our apartment, which she designed down to the last detail, was a testament to our partnership. Her blueprints and models were on one side of the living room, my overflowing bookshelf and art supplies on the other. It worked, it was us. Then, about 8 months ago, things started to change. It wasn't a sudden shift, but a slow, creeping frost that I initially dismissed as work stress. Maya had just been promoted at her firm, taking on bigger projects with more demanding clients. The late nights became more frequent, the work dinners a weekly occurrence. When she was home, she was distant, her mind clearly still at the office, wrestling with load, bearing walls and zoning regulations. The easy laughter that used to fill our rooms faded into a polite, tense silence. The intimacy was the first real casualty. It vanished so completely it felt like I'd imagined it. My attempts to connect, whether it was a simple touch on her arm or a suggestion for a date night, were met with a tired sigh or a vague excuse. "I'm just exhausted, Zoe," she'd say, turning over in bed, her back creating a wall between us that felt more solid than any she could design. I tried to be the supportive wife. I made her favorite meals, ran her baths, and gave her space, assuming the pressure from her job would eventually ease up. I told myself that successful careers required sacrifice, and this was just a phase. I'd waited out, but the distance wasn't just physical. Our conversations became purely functional, a checklist of household chores and bills. I'd tell her about my day, about the little boy in my class who finally learned to write his name, or the funny thing a girl said about clouds, and she'd nod while scrolling through emails on her phone, offering a disconnected, "That's nice, honey." I stopped sharing after a while. It hurt too much to offer up these small, precious pieces of my life only to have them left on the table, untouched. My best friend, Liam, noticed the change immediately. "You seem off," he said one afternoon over coffee. "Is everything okay with you and Maya?" I gave him the same excuses I gave myself. "She's just swamped with the new hotel project. It's a huge deal for her." Liam, a graphic designer who understood the pressures of a creative field, nodded, but his eyes were full of doubt. "Creative pressure is one thing, Zoe. Making your partner feel invisible is another." He was right, of course. I felt like a ghost in my own home. Maya would walk into a room, her eyes sweeping past me as if I were just another piece of furniture she placed perfectly and now took for granted. The shared jokes, the comfortable silences, the feeling of being a team, it was all gone. All that was left were echoes, the memory of laughter in a quiet kitchen, the phantom warmth on an empty side of the bed. I kept telling myself that the woman I loved was still in there somewhere, buried under blueprints and stress. I just had to wait for her to come back to me. I was patient, I was loving, I was understanding. And I was a complete and utter fool. The foundation of our marriage hadn't just developed a few cracks from stress. It was being systematically demolished, and I was the only one who didn't know it. The silence in our home wasn't empty, it was full of secrets I wasn't meant to hear. The Cold War of silence continued for 2 more months. Our apartment became a sterile gallery of a life that once was. I moved through the quiet rooms, my footsteps too loud, my presence an intrusion. Maya's schedule grew even more erratic. Some nights she wouldn't come home until well after I was asleep, and other times she'd be gone before I woke up. The only evidence of her presence, a hastily scribbled note on the counter. "Early meeting. See you tonight." Most of the time, she didn't see me that night either. I was lonely, but my love for her was stubborn. I clung to the memories of the woman she used to be, convinced that this was a temporary storm we just had to weather. I suggested therapy once, a desperate plea in the middle of our kitchen. Maybe we should talk to someone, I said, my voice small, just to help us get through this stressful patch. Maya didn't even look up from her laptop. I don't have time for therapy, Zoe. I have a deadline. We're fine. We weren't fine. We were two strangers sharing a mortgage. I felt myself shrinking, my vibrant personality fading to a dull gray to match the minimalist day, or she loved. My days with the children at school were my only source of color and joy. They reminded me of what uncomplicated affection felt like, a messy hug, a shared secret, a hand held without a second thought. I would come home from a day of pure, unadulterated happiness and step into a world devoid of it. Then, one Tuesday evening, the pattern broke. I was grading art projects at the dining table when Maya came home at a reasonable hour for the first time in weeks. She didn't just dump her bag and head for the shower. She came over to the table, a strange, unreadable expression on her face. She looked tired, but there was something else there, too, a flicker of nervous energy. "What are you working on?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd heard it in months. Startled, I looked up. "Oh, just some drawings from the kids. Leo made a picture of his family, and he gave his dad 6 arms. He said it's because he gives the best hugs." I expected a polite, disinterested nod. Instead, Maya pulled out a chair and sat down, her eyes fixed on me. It was the most direct attention she'd given me in what felt like an eternity, and it immediately put me on edge. My heart started beating a little faster. Was this it? Was she finally ready to talk, to reconnect? "Zoe," she began, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about the future." A fragile hope bloomed in my chest. "Me too," I said eagerly. She took a deep breath, and the words that came out of her mouth were so far from what I expected that my brain struggled to process them. "I think we should have a baby." I just stared at her, dumbfounded. The scissors in my hand stilled over a piece of construction paper. A baby. We hadn't held hands in months. We hadn't shared a real conversation in half a year. We were sleeping in the same bed, but might as well have been in different time zones. And she wanted to bring a child into this emotional wasteland. A baby. I finally managed to say, my voice a confused whisper. "Yes," she said, a practiced smile appearing on her face. It didn't reach her eyes. "We're not getting any younger. I'm 28, you're 27. My career is finally stable. It's the perfect time. You've always wanted to be a mom. You're a natural." Her logic was cold and clinical, like she was presenting a design proposal to a client. She listed the practical reasons: our financial stability, my profession being ideal for motherhood, the biological clock. Not once did she mention love or us, or wanting to share that experience together. She spoke of a baby as if it were the next logical project to undertake, a box to be checked. "Maya," I said slowly, trying to choose my words carefully, we aren't even talking. How can we talk about having a child when we can barely look at each other?" Her expression hardened instantly. The soft facade evaporated, replaced by the familiar impatience. "What does that have to do with it? This would fix things. It would give us a focus, a common goal. It would bring us back together." It was the most manipulative thing I had ever heard. She wasn't suggesting we have a baby to build a family. She was suggesting we use a child as spackle to patch the gaping holes in our marriage. The fragile hope in my chest shattered, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. For the first time, I wasn't just sad or lonely, I was scared. The woman sitting across from me, my wife, was not only a stranger, but she was a stranger with a terrifying agenda that I couldn't begin to understand. My refusal to immediately agree to her baby plan threw Maya into a state of cold fury. She accused me of being unsupportive, of not wanting the same things she did, of sabotaging our future. The conversation ended with her storming into our bedroom and slamming the door, leaving me alone with the children's colorful drawings and a profound sense of unease. For the next week, the apartment was colder than ever. Maya barely spoke to me, her displeasure a heavy cloak that suffocated every room. She wanted a baby, but she didn't want me. Nothing made sense. The truth arrived on a Thursday afternoon, not with a dramatic confession, but through a careless technological mistake. I was at home, having left school early with a migraine. The apartment was quiet, and I was lying on the couch with a cold cloth over my eyes when Maya's phone, which she'd forgotten on the coffee table in her rush to get to a client dinner, buzzed with a notification. I ignored it. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. This time, it was a call. I glanced at the screen. The name displayed was David. I knew David. He was a senior partner at her firm, a man she mentioned frequently. He was her mentor, she'd said, the one who was guiding her on the big hotel project. I let it go to voicemail. My head was pounding, and I was about to drift into a pained sleep when the phone lit up again with a voicemail notification. An audio preview began to play automatically from the lock screen, a feature Maya must have enabled. I didn't mean to listen, but the first few words froze me in place. The voice was male, smooth, and laced with an intimacy that was instantly alarming. "Thinking about you," David's voice said, clear as day in the silent apartment. "Last night was incredible. You need to be careful, though. Leaving your phone at home is risky. Call me when you get this, and Maya, about our plan. You need to convince her soon. I can't wait forever to start our family." I sat bolt upright, the cold cloth falling to the floor. My migraine vanished, replaced by a roaring in my ears. I grabbed her phone, my hands shaking so violently I could barely unlock it with the passcode I knew by heart. I played the full voicemail. "Hey, it's me." David's voice continued. "Just checking in. I keep thinking about you about last night. You need to be careful, though. Leaving your phone at home is risky. Call me when you get this, and Maya, about our plan. You need to convince her soon. I can't wait forever to start our family. The clock is ticking for us." "No, just push her a little harder. She'll agree eventually. Talk soon. Our plan, our family, the clock is ticking for us." The pieces of the last 8 months slammed into place with brutal, gut-wrenching clarity. The distance, the late nights, the lack of intimacy, and the sudden, desperate, out-of-the-blue request for a baby. It wasn't for us, it was for them. My breath hitched in my throat. I felt a wave of nausea so intense I had to grip the edge of the coffee table. Maya wasn't just cheating on me. She and her lover had concocted a twisted, monstrous plan. They wanted me to carry a baby, their baby. They were going to use my body as an incubator to build the family she no longer wanted with me. She would get her child, and once the baby was born, what then? Would she leave me fighting for custody? Would she try to raise the child with me while continuing her affair? The sheer, calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. I stumbled into the bathroom and was sick. I knelt on the cold tile floor, shaking, replaying his words in my head. Convince her soon, push her a little harder. She had been pushing, her anger, her accusations. It was all part of the act. Every tired sigh, every dismissive comment, every cold shoulder for the past year was a lie. A purposeful act of emotional neglect designed to break me down so I would be more receptive to her insane proposal. My first instinct was to smash her phone, to pack a bag and run. But as the initial shock subsided, it was replaced by a different emotion, a slow-burning, glacial rage. They thought I was a soft, gentle preschool teacher who could be easily manipulated. They saw me as a means to an end, a tool. They had underestimated me. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I stood up and looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with horror, but behind the fear, a new resolve was forming. They had a plan. Fine, now I would have won too. I deleted the voicemail from her phone, placed it back on the coffee table exactly where I found it, and went back to the couch. When Maya came home later that night, smelling of expensive perfume and lies, I was waiting. I was no longer the sad, confused wife. I was a woman who had just been handed a declaration of war. The days following the discovery of the voicemail were the most difficult of my life. I had to leave with Maya, acting as if nothing had changed, while my mind was a whirlwind of betrayal and fury. Every polite good morning, every functional question about dinner felt like a scene from a twisted play. I was playing the part of the oblivious wife, but behind my calm facade, I was gathering my strength and my evidence. The rage I felt was a cold, clean fire, burning away the fog of sadness and confusion. Liam was my only anchor. I met him for lunch the day after the discovery and told him everything, my voice low and steady as I recounted the contents of the voicemail. He listened without interruption, his expression shifting from shock to disbelief, and finally to a protective anger that matched my own. "Zoe, this is monstrous," he breathed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "What are you going to do? I'm not going to break down, and I'm not going to let them win," I said, my voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "She has a plan, a blueprint for how she wants her life to go. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find every lie, every secret, and I'm going to use it to tear her world down." Liam nodded, his support absolute. "Okay, what do you need?" My investigation began that night. Maya believed I was naive and technologically inept, a trait she often teased me about. It was one of her many miscalculations. While she was in the shower, I turned on our shared laptop. We had a family cloud account where photos and documents were automatically synced from our phones. It was a digital treasure trove she had completely forgotten about. I started with her photo stream. Buried among pictures of architectural models and site visits were photos I was never meant to see. A selfie of her and David, smiling, at a restaurant I didn't recognize, dated on a night she told me she was working late. A picture of her hand intertwined with his, a man's watch on his wrist that I'd seen him wear at her company's holiday party. There were photos from a weekend trip to a coastal town she claimed was a solo work retreat to clear her head. In the reflection of her sunglasses, I could see David taking the picture. Each photo was a small, sharp betrayal, but the real evidence, the blueprint, I was looking for was in the documents folder. I found a subfolder titled Personal Projects, password, protected. I tried all the usual passwords, our anniversary, her birthday, our cat's name. Nothing worked. Then, on a hunch, I tried the project name of the hotel she was so proud of, Northwood. It clicked open. Inside was a document that made my blood run cold. It was titled Life Made My Blood Run Cold. It was titled Life Plan 5-Year. It was a detailed, step-by-step projection of her future, written with the same clinical precision she used for her architectural plans. Year 1, secure project lead at Northwood complete. Finalize separation from Z. Initiate pregnancy process Q4. Year 2, baby born Q3. Finalize divorce. Secure 50/50 custody. Move in with D. Announce relationship publicly. Year 3, purchase new property with D. Begin design for our family home. Year 4, travel, second child planning. Year 5, establish family unit, partnership at the firm. My name Z was a checklist item. Initiate pregnancy process. Finalize divorce. I wasn't a person. I was a logistical step in her grand design. She had mapped out the destruction of my life and the creation of hers with all the emotional detachment of a construction schedule. There were even financial projections estimating alimony and child support payments. I saved a copy of everything. The photos, the document, even a few saved email chains between her and David discussing their future, to a secure, encrypted flash drive. I made screenshots and backed them up online. Every piece of data was another nail in the coffin she was building for our marriage. The most damning evidence came from her synced text messages. I found the entire thread with David. It was filled with affectionate names, complaints about me being so needy and clueless, and detailed discussions about their baby plan. She's still resisting. Maya had texted him just last week. She's trying to work on us. It's pathetic. David's reply, just stick to the plan, my love. Be patient. Think of the end goal, our baby, our house, our life. She's just a bridge to get us there. A bridge, that's all I was. A temporary structure to be used and then demolished. I closed the laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs, not with pain, but with a chilling sense of power. They had given me everything I needed. They had documented their own cruelty in meticulous detail. Maya the architect had drafted the perfect blueprint for her own downfall, and I, the simple preschool teacher, was about to become the demolition expert. With the flash drive of evidence tucked safely away, my mission shifted. It was no longer enough to just leave her. I needed to ensure that her meticulously crafted life plan would never come to fruition. She had planned to systematically dismantle my life for her own gain. I would simply expose the rot in her foundation and watch it crumble on its own. It wasn't about revenge in a flashy, dramatic sense. It was about justice. It was about ensuring she and David faced the consequences of their actions. The first step was legal. I found a highly recommended divorce lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Helen. I sat in her office, slid the flash drive across her desk, and calmly said, "My wife is having an affair and has a documented plan to use me as a surrogate for her and her lover's child before divorcing me. It's all on there." Helen listened as I walked her through the evidence, the life plan. Document the photos, the text messages. Her expression grew increasingly grim. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and professional steeliness. In my 20 years of practicing family law. She said slowly, "This is one of the most brazen and psychologically cruel cases I have ever seen. This document," she tapped the flash drive, "is extraordinary. The premeditation is staggering." She laid out my options. We could file for divorce immediately on grounds of infidelity. The evidence was irrefutable. She assured me that given the documented emotional cruelty and manipulative intent, any judge would be highly sympathetic to my case, especially regarding the division of assets. Maya's plan to secure 50/50 custody of a child I would have been tricked into carrying was, as Helen put it, a fantasy that would be laughed out of court. "So what do you want, Zoe?" Helen asked. "Do you want to go in quiet, or do you want to make a statement?" "I want to make sure she understands what she's done," I replied. Her career is everything to her, her reputation, her image as a brilliant, in-control architect. David's is too. I want their groundbreaking ceremony to be one they'll never forget. Helen smiled faintly. "I like your thinking. We'll draft the divorce papers. You decide when and how to serve them." My plan began to take shape, piece by piece, like one of Maya's own designs. I knew the perfect moment was coming up. Maya's firm was hosting a large celebratory dinner in 2 weeks to honor the team behind the Northwood Hotel project. David would be there. Maya's parents, who adored me and saw our marriage as perfect, would be there. The senior partners of the firm would be there. It was Maya's big night, a celebration of her professional triumph. It was the perfect stage. For the next 2 weeks, I became the most dedicated actress of my life. I apologized to Maya for being difficult about the baby idea. I told her I had been thinking about it and that I was scared, but I was willing to consider it. The relief on her face was nauseating. She thought her manipulation was working, that the clueless Zoe was finally coming around. She became warmer, more attentive, a sickeningly sweet performance to coax me toward her goal. It took every ounce of my self-control not to recoil from her touch. Behind the scenes, Liam was my co-conspirator. He helped me prepare what I needed for the dinner. I made several small, discreet packets. Each one contained a few key pieces of evidence, a printed copy of the life plan document, a photo of Maya and David from their work retreat, and a transcript of their most damning text messages, including the one where David called me a bridge. I also drafted a simple, clear email. The recipient list included the entire executive board of Maya's architectural firm, their HR department, and David's wife, whose name and email I had found through some careful online sleuthing. The email was saved as a draft, ready to be sent with a single click. The night before the dinner, Maya came to my side of the bed and kissed my forehead. "I'm so glad we're getting back on track," she whispered. "Big night tomorrow. You'll be proud of me." "I can't wait," I said, my voice even. I looked into the eyes of the woman I had loved for 7 years, a woman who was planning to use and discard me like a piece of scaffolding, and I felt nothing but a profound, final calm. The final act was drafted. The stage was set. All I had to do was pull the curtain. The restaurant for the celebratory dinner was exactly the kind of place Maya loved, sleek, modern, and expensive, with panoramic views of the city skyline. It was filled with the most influential people in her professional world. When we arrived, she was glowing, holding my hand tightly as she introduced me to her colleagues. "This is my wonderful wife, Zoe," she'd say, and I would smile politely, the perfect, supportive spouse. David was there, of course, with his own wife, a quiet woman named Eleanor. He gave me a condescendingly charming smile, completely unaware that I knew he referred to me as a bridge. Maya's parents, John and Susan, hugged me warmly. "We're so proud of her," Susan said, beaming, "and we're so happy she has you by her side." I felt a pang of sadness for them. They were good people who were about to be caught in the crossfire of their daughter's treachery. We sat at the head table alongside David, Eleanor, and a few of the firm's senior partners. The evening began with speeches. People praised Maya's vision, her dedication, her brilliance. She soaked it all in, looking every bit the star of the show. I clapped along with everyone else, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. My purse containing the evidence packets sat in my lap. After the main course, Maya stood up to give her own speech. She thanked her team, the partners, and then she turned to me. "And finally," she said, her voice filled with fake emotion, "I have to thank my incredible wife, Zoe. Her patience and support have been the foundation on which I've been able to build my career. We've been through a lot recently, but we're stronger than ever and are looking forward to building our own project together very soon." She winked at me, a clear reference to her baby plan. A wave of murmurs and supportive smiles went through the room. She was painting the perfect picture of a power couple. She sat down to thunderous applause. She squeezed my hand under the table. "I love you," she whispered. This was my cue. I leaned in and whispered back, "I know you do, and I have a surprise for you too, for both of you." I gave a pointed look toward David. I stood up, my wine glass in hand. I'd just like to say a few words as well, if I may. A hush fell over the table. Maya looked at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Zoe, what are you doing?" she murmured. "Maya, you called me your foundation," I began, my voice clear and carrying in the quiet room. "And you, David, have been her mentor. It's so inspiring to see such a dedicated professional partnership." I smiled directly at them. Eleanor, David's wife, looked on with a pleasant expression. "In architecture, a blueprint is everything." I continued, my voice never wavering. "It ensures a structure is sound, and Meyer is a brilliant planner. She doesn't just design buildings, she designs her whole life. In fact, she and David have designed a truly ambitious life plan for their future." Maya's face went pale. David froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "I was so moved when I found it. I said, reaching into my purse, I thought you all should see the kind of long-term vision your star employees have." I calmly placed a packet in front of Maya. Then I stood up, walked around the table, and placed one in front of David, then one in front of his wife, Eleanor, and one in front of each senior partner at the table. Finally, I walked over to Maya's parents and gently handed one to her father. "Go on," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "Open it. It's the blueprint for the family you." I looked at Maya and you. I looked at David, "have been planning." Silence, then the sound of tearing paper. I watched as Eleanor's face crumpled in disbelief and horror as she read the texts. I saw the senior partner's eyes widen as he scanned the 5-year plan. I saw Maya's father, John, stare at the photo of his daughter with David, his face turning ashen. Maya shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Zoe, stop this," she hissed, her voice a panicked whisper. "Stop what?" I asked loudly, turning to face her. "Stop you from tricking me into being a surrogate for your affair. Stop you from using me as a bridge, as David so poetically put it in your texts, and then divorcing me once I gave you a child." A collective gasp went through the room. Eleanor started sobbing quietly. David looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "I have filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and extreme emotional cruelty." I announced to the room, "The evidence you're holding is just a sample. The complete file has been sent to my lawyer." I turned back to Maya, whose face was a mask of pure shock and fury. Her perfect evening, her career, defining moment, was in ruins. Her reputation was incinerated. "You wanted a groundbreaking ceremony," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper for her alone. "Here it is." I placed my wedding ring on the table. Then I picked up my phone, opened my drafts, and pressed send on the email to the firm's executive board and HR department. With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving the rubble of Maya's carefully constructed life behind me. I didn't look back. The walk away from the restaurant was surreal. The cool night air felt like the first clean breath I had taken in a year. I didn't feel triumphant or vengeful. I felt a profound, quiet sense of release. The weight I had been carrying, the confusion, the hurt, the suffocating pretense, was finally gone. By the time I got to Liam's apartment, my phone was exploding with calls and texts from Maya, her parents, and numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off and handed it to Liam. "It's done," I said. He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time since I'd heard that voicemail, I let myself cry. They weren't tears of sadness, but of sheer, unadulterated relief. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. As Helen, my lawyer, later told me, the dinner party imploded after I left. David's wife, Eleanor, caused a massive scene before leaving him on the spot. Maya's parents were devastated and confronted her publicly. The firm's partners were left speechless, holding the evidence of a massive ethical and moral scandal involving 2 of their top employees. The email I sent had sealed their professional fates. The firm launched an immediate internal investigation. David, as a senior partner engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate and conspiring in a morally bankrupt scheme, was forced to resign to avoid being fired outright. His own divorce was reportedly brutal and costly. Maya was suspended. Her reputation was shattered. The brilliant architect was now known as a ruthless manipulator. She was eventually let go from the firm, her Northwood project handed over to someone else. The career she had sacrificed everything for was in tatters. Our divorce was swift. Faced with the mountain of undeniable, documented evidence, Maya's lawyer advised her not to contest anything. I didn't ask for much, just what I was legally entitled to, half of our shared assets, and for her to buy me out of the apartment. I wanted no alimony, no prolonged connection. I just wanted to be free. She agreed to everything, desperate to make it all go away. She tried to contact me multiple times, sending long, rambling emails full of excuses and blame before they eventually turned to pathetic apologies. I never responded. I forwarded everything to Helen and blocked her number. Her parents reached out to me once. Her mother, Susan, cried on the phone, apologizing for her daughter's behavior. I told her gently that it wasn't her fault, but that I needed to move on completely. That was the last I heard from them. Selling my half of the apartment gave me enough money for a fresh start. I found a small, bright apartment for myself on the other side of town. It wasn't sleek or minimalist. It was warm, filled with color, plants, and shelves overflowing with my books. It felt like me. The healing process was slow but steady. I focused on my work, pouring my energy into the little lives that depended on me. The innocence and honesty of the children were a balm to my soul. Liam was my rock, always there for a movie night or a rant session, reminding me of what true, unconditional friendship felt like. It's been a year now. I sometimes hear things about Maya through the grapevine. She moved to a different city, trying to rebuild her career at a smaller firm, but her reputation followed her. David, I heard, lost a significant portion of his wealth in his divorce and is now working as a consultant. Their life plan never made it past the first page. I, on the other hand, am building a new life, not from a cold, rigid blueprint, but organically, day by day. I'm starting to date again, cautiously, but with an open heart. I'm taking a pottery class. I'm happy. I cleared the toxic foundation Maya left behind and found that the ground underneath was solid. I'm my own architect now, and for the first time in a long time, the future I'm designing is all my own.